Okay. All right, so last week we talked about the church of Philadelphia. This was a church that was doing a good job. They had no words of condemnation from God, no words of correction. He told them that for anybody that was truly saved, it would be an open door to heaven. And as we know, those that die without God will be excluded from, will not be allowed into heaven because of their choice of not accepting the Savior and His work on the cross. So, and we talked about that God will protect. He says here that God will protect them from the time of trouble. We talked about that there's a couple schools of thought on that. There's one that, the kind of the basis of the rapture. People that believe in the pre-trib rapture point to this verse and say that that God is going to rapture the church out before all this craziness of the final days, final end times really starts to happen. And then there's also, the school of thought that this, that they may have to be here for it, but that God will put some special protection around them so that they are not as impacted by it. And so we don't know fully what this means, but, and kind of cite the words of Jesus when He was praying in the garden before His crucifixion. He was praying that, and He said, I do not want you to remove them from me. He was praying for us, all believers. He said, I'm not asking for you to remove them from the world, but to protect them from the evil one. So that's why there's kind of, a back and forth as to what exactly protecting from the time of trouble means to full extent. If it's, just won't be here at all because of rapture, or if it's just be here but protected in some way. And we'll see more as we go through and talk, about the rest of the events in Revelation as they happen and come about. We'll see more about that, and there's a point in time where just like all people of the world, in order to be able to trade and to buy and to sell and to do what basically exist in the world, that they'll have to receive a mark, and in the Bible it's called the mark of the beast. By the Antichrist, he'll order that, and so. But there's also, and that's pretty well known. A lot of people know about that coming and stuff like that. But there's also another part of it that there's a mark that God is going to put on His people. That only, my understanding of it is what I've looked at so far, which isn't a great deal, but my understanding is that it'll only be able to be seen by other believers. And so, and maybe maybe that's what's being referred to by protecting from the time of trouble. We don't know. We do know that during that time, a lot of people will be martyred that are here, that become believers after the rapture, if you want to look at it that way, and stuff. And so but basically, don't get hung up on that. Live your life every day as if Christ is coming back at any moment, which is entirely possible, and you don't got to worry about it if there's a rapture or not. And so, but, we'll see. So, okay, so, and then the faithful will be spiritual pillars in the temple of heaven, in God's temple in heaven. They're not going to be like literal pillars holding the place up, but they'll be well known. They'll be, what are some famous evangelists or people of church history that we know of?
Billy Graham.
Billy Graham, right. Martin Luther is another one, right? Any others? Do you think of any others? John Wesley?
Tommy Howe.
Okay, Tommy Howe. He watches these, by the way, so yeah. Yeah. But, so in fact, I was talking to him the other night, and he told me that if I couldn't make Sunday school, I'd just call you and let you talk about how John's still around. He said, Jody will lead your class, don't worry about it. So, yeah, okay. So, but yeah, so we know these people, we know these names, and so that's what it'll be like for these people in heaven. The faithful they'll be known in heaven, and they'll be the spiritual pillars is how it's described. They'll be the ones that everybody knows their name and it knows who they are, and and it'll be the people of the Bible as well. I mean, Elijah and the apostles, the disciples, and Paul and all those. I mean, they're spiritual pillars as well. So anybody that remains faithful is he's telling them here that they'll be part of that. And so but okay. So any questions about Philadelphia? That's church number 6. We got one more, so we're going to get through that today. And then if we still got time, I'm going to, I got a little bit, something else we're going to discuss kind of in brief. Any questions or comments about Philadelphia? This is the church we want to model ourselves after. Like I said, it was no condemnation from God. They were doing the work of God the way that he wanted. And so, all right, then let's move on to the last one. And I'm going to try, but, please don't get mad at me if I butcher this name several times during this lesson today. But I believe it's Laodicea. And so, okay. So, but, so we're going to look at verses, chapter 3, verses 14 through 22 is where this one is talked about. And so he says, write this letter to the angel of the church of Laodicea. This is the message from the one who is the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of God's new creation. I know all the things you do, that you are neither hot nor cold. I wish you were one or the other. But since you are lukewarm water, neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. You say, I am rich, I have everything I want. I don't need a thing. And you do not realize that you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. So I advise you to buy gold from me, gold that has been purified by fire. Then you will be rich. Also buy white garments from me, so that you will not be shamed by your nakedness. And ointment for your eyes, so you will be able to see. I correct and discipline everyone I love, so be diligent and turn from your indifference. Look, I stand at the door and knock. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in, and I will share a meal. And we will share a meal together as friends. Those who are victorious will sit with me on my throne, just as I was victorious and sat with my Father on his throne. Anyone with ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what he is saying to the churches. All right. So this is a wealthy city. They made a lot of black wool in this city. Medicine was also used in this city. So in each letter, he's kind of referenced something about the city or about the area or whatever. And so he mentions here about an ointment for the eye, so that they can see better. And so, this is what, there's a lot of medicine in this city and a lot of manufacturing of black wool and stuff. And it was weird. It was a well-to-do city. It was a lot of blessing and a lot of richness, wealthiness. The city worshipped the god of healing, Asclepius, I guess, and Zeus. So these were the two main gods that were worshipped by the people of the city. And there was also a large cult of emperor worship here. Of course, we know that Caesar wanted statues put in all the temples. Doesn't matter what temple, Jewish or Christian or whatever. He wanted his statue put in each one. so that they could worship him as God. And so this was really big here as well. Some places kind of took to that, and other places kind of resisted a little bit. This place really took to emperor worship. So the church was having to deal with a lot of idol worship, and but it's kind of no different than any of the other six. The other six churches also were dealing with it as well. So I got cold water here. We like water cold. We like coffee. I like coffee hot. But some people, like cold iced coffee as well. Okay. You ever heard anybody drink lukewarm coffee? What do you do if you got a cup of coffee that you've had for a little while and you go to taste it and it's been sitting out a while and it's lukewarm? What do you normally do with that?
Stick it in the microwave.
Right, stick it in the microwave, heat it up, spit it back out, right? But you generally don't finish that cup of coffee without trying to make it hot or cold or whatever, right? Well, that's what God is saying here. There's a drink, or whatever you want to say, can be refreshing if it's cold. And it can also be very soothing and refreshing if it's hot. But a lukewarm drink is not going to be very satisfying to anybody. And it's just the way we're made. And he's talking about this a lot because there was some hot springs in one of the cities that was close by, that they built aqueducts to bring the water down from there. But by the time it was hot at its first location, but by the time it got to the people, it was lukewarm. It wasn't as hot as it was up in the springs. So they had to either make it, kind of cold or heat it up or whatever, however they did that in those times. And so that's the analogy he's using here, because he knew that they would understand about it. Okay? And so he's saying that the people here are very indifferent. They're not cold. He says that he wants them to be either cold or hot. They're not on fire for him, and they're not cold for him. Cold would still, most people view cold in a spiritual sense as bad. But cold, in the way that Christ is describing it here, is not bad. At least you're one way or the other. And cold can be refreshing and can help people and can be very encouraging to people and stuff. And so, it's not necessarily a negative. And that's what we got to kind of get away from here. Like I say, a lot of people look at this passage and say, oh, well, you don't want to be cold, you want to be hot, you want to be on fire. That's true. You want to be doing the things of God, and you want to be doing all that you can for God. Okay, but there's something also to be said about, if you're cold, and it kind of goes on which if you're still doing the work of God, but you're just, I don't want to say, I guess I'm really struggling with how to say this, but, you don't want to be cold for too long, because then you just kind of, but if you're cold for a period of time in some of the things of God, that's okay. As long as your heart is still right and still in tune with God. And that's what it all amounts down to, is a matter of the heart. Okay? But we don't want to stay cold forever, but God does say, if you are hot or cold, I wish you were one or the other. But since you are neither hot or cold, and I know some, yeah, right, I wish that you were one or the other, he says in verse 15. I know all the things you do, that you are neither hot nor cold. I wish you were one or the other. God's telling him, do something, whether you're hot or you're cold. Don't be indifferent about everything. And so that's the big thing we need to take away from here, is we gotta, there's some things that we're gonna be, we need to be red hot on fire about, and that's the Great Commission. That's the other thing. Then there's other things of the Bible and of the things that we need to take a stand for, that we would take a stand for even if we were cold, but that they're not something we gotta be red hot, on fire, willing to fight for people, fight people to, make them, we don't wanna lack on the things of God, but the things that are inconsequential, don't get all fired up and carried on and everything else about it. Okay? But make sure that you do take that stand. And so that's kind of what he's saying here. And I probably haven't articulated that well at all. Everybody, any questions, comments?
I guess the things that doesn't affect our salvation are not as important as the things that do affect our salvation.
Exactly.
Very narrow road.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Not a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So, right, exactly. We
A lot of unanswered questions in the Bible, and everybody wants to have the answer that nobody else has, and
right.
Sometimes it doesn't matter.
That's exactly right.
Repeat that again, Jody.
I can't.
Just can't.
Now he said that the things that matter to our salvation are the things we should be hot about, and the things that are don't matter
whether John's still living or not.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it shouldn't be. So.
One day when he walks in the door.
Or whether the Antichrist is here or not, it don't matter, God's still in control.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, that's what
exactly.
I will say, and different opinions about things,
Yep.
about religion should be out the door. You should worry about
Yeah, that's
your
basically,
walk with the Lord.
that's what he's getting at here. Different styles of worship. Are we gonna have a contemporary worship? Or are we gonna have a traditional worship?
Right.
Whatever. As long as it's centered on God and heart focused and everything,
Exactly.
it don't matter. Why are we fighting over it
Exactly.
within the church? Okay? I mean, that's what,
A girl told me this week that her family had never been to church, and I asked her why. I said, may I ask why? She said, well, we just wasn't brought up like that. And I said, well, you can do something about it. You can go to church.
yeah.
And
And
have
she
your
said,
children.
why? I said, honey, so you can get saved and go to heaven. I said, that's as plain as I can put it to you.
Yeah.
That's from talking in Walmart.
Well, there you go. So, see? Billy's preaching in Walmart. So there you go.
I do, I don't care. Somebody said something about it, she just brought it up, and I just felt the need to tell her,
Yeah.
Just because
Well,
her
and
family
that's-
doesn't go, that means she can't go to church.
Exactly.
That's the thing that kind of puzzles me to some degree. Okay, you weren't brought up that way, but aren't you your own person now? If you're grown and an adult, aren't you your own person? Just because you weren't brought up that way, a lot of things happen in this region of the country that I wasn't brought up doing in the region of the country that I grew up in. But,
Bless your heart.
hey, exactly. But, I mean, it's,
Well, we just
So-
saw a family up here at the stoplight. Man and woman and children. And I just thought, they ride bicycles, won't they ride on down here to Taylor Street, come on to church?
Right.
you know?
yeah, exactly. So, but it doesn't mean that just because, I haven't experienced that growing up, doesn't mean I'm not gonna, check it out and see about it and, maybe it's for me, maybe it's not, I just don't understand how I was never brought up on that. Well, you're responsible for yourself now. So, and yes, you do take family traditions and heritage and all that kind of stuff is important, but you don't, you're not closed off.
You don't use family traditions and different things for an excuse.
Right.
That's what they're doing. They say we weren't brought up that way. That's just an excuse for you not, it's the reason
Exactly.
you can go.
Yeah, I'm not here because my mama brought me to church every day. I'm here because I want to be here.
There you go. That's right.
I didn't do a lot of things my mom brought me up.
Yeah.
And stuff and regretted many.
Yep.
But, we don't, that's just an excuse that I've used so many times.
Oh, yeah.
Mama
So-
don't do that.
But yeah, so,
Just cause mom didn't do it, don't mean you can't do it.
right. And so Jesus is telling them here that they need to get, you know, they're busy, they're doing things, but they're really not doing anything.
You do.
And so the other problem that this church had is that they believed they didn't need anything. They had a lot. They were blessed with a lot. They didn't, you know, their wealth made them self-sufficient, and they didn't think they needed God for anything. Does the church in America suffer of that sometimes
Yeah.
as a whole?
Yeah.
I mean, we are blessed. We're a blessed nation, but yet sometimes I think we've gone blind to the fact that we still need God. So, but Jesus tells them, and it says here, you know, Jesus is telling them, so buy gold for me. He's not looking for them to give him money for gold and for white garments. Don't think that. Again, he's talking in spiritual metaphor or whatever here. He's telling them, you need to find the gold of the relationship that we had, that we need to have. White garments to be pure, you know, and you know, get back to the relationship with me. That's why he's saying, get it from me. That's the thing. He's not looking for monetary stuff from them. God doesn't need our money. I mean, he asks us to give and help and further the kingdom and the cause, and so we don't be so tight-fisted in whatever with what he's given us. But he also wants us to look to him for our needs, which is what this church lacked. They weren't looking to him for anything anymore. They were trying to do everything on their own. And he's telling them, look to me for the gold. Look to me for you know, the white garments, the purity of life and everything. And so that's what he's basically saying, you know. Look to me. Get back to looking to me. And that's where we need to be in our walk, in our relationship, and as a church and everything. Okay? This is done by genuine repenting and getting right. We know this. We've heard this many times. He tells them he's standing at the door and knocking. Which means that he's outside the church. He's not in the midst of the church.
That's not a good thing.
That's not a good thing.
It's getting more common.
Right.
It certainly is.
Even if you're doing, and I've said this a few times throughout the churches and whatever, and when I did a Sunday night service here a month or half ago or something, whenever, this was kind of part of what I talked about, was that even if you're doing work for God, if you're not putting God first and doing it the way he's wanting you to do it, you're not doing it. It's actually worse than not doing it at all. You're being disobedient. There's work that he wants you to do, but yes, you may have some impacts with some of the things that the church does. If you're part of the church or in your life, you may have some impact with some people or whatever, but you are not going to see the impact that you can have and that God wants you to have if you don't include him in it. If you're doing it without including him in it, you are dead wrong. You need to repent of that.
You're being a stumbling block because you're saying that you're doing it in his name and you're not.
Exactly.
So you're,
And there is
Very
a
good
lot
point.
of people taking things in the Bible out of context. They don't understand it, but I don't argue on that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I put it in God's hands and let him send somebody to them
Right.
that is experts, because
Right.
I'm no expert.
And that's the thing is, you know, you need to study for yourself and
That's
to
exactly
become,
right.
you know, to be better acquainted with it and stuff so that you can talk to, you know, answer questions and talk to somebody and whatever. So, but a genuine repenting. So we don't want God standing outside the door and knocking. You know, I know everybody knows the picture I'm thinking about when I read that verse or whatever. Everybody's seen it, and you know, a lot of people have pointed out that there's no doorknob on the outside of that door that he's standing knocking at. So it's not like he can. So we gotta open the door from the inside and let him in.
Yes.
And that's what this church is not done. He's on the outside, and they either don't realize it or you know, they do and they just don't care. In any case, this church is on dangerous ground. Okay? He wants to come in. He wants to share a meal. And he wants people to be victorious. He wants everybody to be able to be on the throne with him in heaven and ruling. And it's, you know, they're just not there. This church is not there. So, okay. When the church starts to do things independently from God, they will not last long. Same applies to us in our Christian life. If we start doing things independently of God, then without his presence and direction in our life, then we are going to have some serious struggles. And God will forgive us for making poor choices, but that doesn't mean we're not going to suffer the earthly consequences of those actions. You go out and murder somebody in cold blood, yeah, God will forgive you, but you're still going to jail.
Yes.
There's consequences. So if they're victorious in their walk, they will sit with God on his throne. This means they will be with him when he rules for eternity. Okay? So again, there is a remnant in each church that we've talked about that believes and it's been faithful. And so he gives them warning, you know, he gives them encouragement for those people as well. In all 7 letters, he's ended it with, anyone with ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what he is saying to the churches. All 7 letters got ended with that line. So he's telling us to pay attention. Listen. Take to heart what these letters have said.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this would have you know, we started with Ephesus, went up to Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and now down to Laodicea. A courier would have probably gone to all 7. Or John, when he got off the island of Patmos, went and visited all 7. We don't know how it got there, but each letter, and so, you know, I don't know if all 7 churches heard the letters, but I doubt it. I believe that each one got their own letter as was designed here. Otherwise, it would have just been one long text if all the churches, I think, were going to get it. And plus, there's encouragement and there's other stuff, you know, for each specific church. So I really believe that, you know, there was 7 separate independent letters that went to these churches that whoever took it would have had to have delivered. And so, you know, but that would have been pretty well, you know, the route makes a nice circle there. Would have been pretty well the route that they would have taken to that. So, but he's saying, you know, listen, take seriously what I've said. Okay? So we need to take seriously. And if you need to go back and review the letters, look them over again, go back and look them over. You know, just, you know, I got the notes up in the vestibule if you want to take my notes from what I talk about so that you got some stuff, you know. But again, this not only applies to churches, but it applies to Christians in their lives and their walk. And we can go throughout the county, lots of churches right here in our own county that, and we can probably find an example of each one of these churches in the county. Well, we can also find an example of each type of Christian based on these churches. Probably in each and every church. Even in this church, there's some people that aren't as committed to God as some others that aren't on fire. There's probably some people in this church that in their relationship, their walk with God, that they're just lukewarm. There's some that maybe are just, you know, in a walk or a small walk with God and you know, otherwise not doing a whole lot.
Well,
And there's others that have lost their first love.
Bruce,
Yes.
in our little family of God, we have in our church membership officially about 150 people.
Okay.
My question is this morning, where are they?
Yeah.
Most of them you never see And that bothers me, I mean, you know.
Yep.
Why aren't they here? Some of them cannot be, but a whole lot of them just simply don't care.
Right. So, exactly. So it's, you know, but, and that's the thing, and so, you know, and then there's some that are totally committed to God in their walk each and every day. You know, like the Church of Philadelphia, like the church at Smyrna that had no condemnation from God. Now, none of us are perfect, not saying that, but, you know, and I'm sure those churches made some mistakes in there, but wasn't serious enough for God to call them out on. You know, and when they make mistakes, they were probably repenting of it and getting right away. So, and that's the basic thing we need to take away here is we need to try to, you know, build up our relationship with God, because, you know, no matter when the rapture happens or whether or not there is a rapture or whatever you want to believe on that, you know, that's another one of those non-consequential, let's not get all fired up about when the rapture is going to happen. It's one of those issues we were talking about. You know, we ain't got to get all hot and bothered about it, you know, making everybody believe, you know, it's going to happen this way, it's going to happen this way, it's going to happen this way. Okay, great if it does. But it's not something that, you know, is a salvation thing. And so we don't need to be all fired up about that. But we need to be fired up about the important things of God and reaching the lost. And so I just, you know, ask you to just kind of review your lives, your walk with God, think about these letters to the churches. You can go back and review them. There's basically chapters 2 and 3 of Revelation is the 7 churches. And, you know, if you have any questions, you can see me. And then, you know, just kind of bear it in mind. And it's all a matter of the heart, too. So, questions, thoughts, comments?
Bruce, there's a thing in my Bible for Laodicea.
Yeah.
And it talks about, there's actually a lost letter from Paul to Laodicea.
Really?
It's in Colossians 4:16, and it says it tells the Laodiceans to read the letter that he sent to Colossians, and that to look for a letter coming to them.
Oh, wow.
And it's
Okay.
lost.
Yep.
Just a little point. I'm just
Okay.
saying that now.
Yeah. I hadn't.
No, one of those mysteries.
Yeah, there you go. So.
John's gonna deliver.
John's got the letter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
come away.
Yeah.
No, give him a little time.
Yeah, exactly. So, but, yeah, so, yeah, so, and that'd be, you know, I can see that a lukewarm church might not care about the letter from Paul.
Yeah. The lost.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna put up the other way, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
so, but, you know, so yeah, so I don't know, but, yeah, any other thoughts, comments?
There was a boy that, I didn't talk to him, but I knew he'd been in the hospital for 8 months with COVID. And, he said while he was there, he thought he was saved, but he died and went to hell. And he was like, God, why'd you put me here? I thought I was a good person. I thought I was saved.
Yeah.
But he said he ended up in hell, and he started begging God for another chance. And God come and got him and brought him back out of hell. And he got his preacher up there right then and taught him about salvation. He said because he thought he was saved,
Yeah.
but he was not.
It's really a great deception that the devil has pulled to, you know, get, and a lot of that falls at the feet of the church, for sure, that the church has gotten so caught up in different beliefs and different things and whatever interpretations of the Bible and, you know, all this stuff, and he's been able to deceive people by thinking, yeah, I'm a good person, I'm better than most, I'm not committing any crimes, I'm not doing this, I'm living a good, decent life, you know, living my best life and whatever and all that stuff, and you know, but yet they're still not saved because they haven't made that commitment.
I'm a good person. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah. God's not going to be that cruel. He's just.
Yep.
That's their. Yeah.
That's
That's the trick.
exactly that's what a lot of people believe. And so there's a lot of people going to be in hell, like you said, like he experienced. You know that you're gonna wake up shocked when they're in hell and be like, wait a minute. And he even talks about that. Jesus even said in his own words, you know, it'll be like, Lord, Lord, we did many things in your name. but yet, and he'll say, depart from me, I knew you not. So, and it's really sad that people, but that's a great deception and a great tool of the devil that he does that. So, anything else?